When I woke, the first thing that struck me was the absolute quiet. I figured hospitals were supposed to be loud, with all the beeping, chatter, and the humming of equipment. But all I could hear was my own labored breaths. I squinted against the unforgiving glare of the overhead lights. Every part of me felt like it had been through a brutal battle. The last thing I could recall was the truck's headlights glaring, the awful sound of metal twisting, and then everything went blank. Fear surged through me like a jolt of electricity. Leo. My voice was raspy, almost a whisper. "Where's my son?" A nurse looked up from her desk with a gentle yet uncertain look on her face. "Your family took him home," she said. I felt a wave of relief. Thank heavens, my 7-year-old was safe, but there was something unsettling about the way she put it. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking. It was dead. "Could you charge this for me?" I asked. She agreed, plugging it in. "Your family came by yesterday," she stated after a beat, picking her words carefully. "Yesterday? Then why weren't they here now?" My stomach twisted with a growing sense of dread. I waited, my heart racing, until my phone had enough power to switch on. The moment it turned on, a multitude of messages flooded in, but not from my own family. Friends. Work associates, people were inquiring about me, but my family, nothing. Then I saw it, my bank notifications, $95,000. Vanished, the room started to spin. No. No, this couldn't be happening. I had been putting that money away for years, for Leo, for any problems that might arise. I felt fear, which made me gasp quickly. I frantically moved my finger across the screen, desperately wishing that I was mistaken about what I was seeing. But the activity was real, one entry followed by another. Money gone, plane tickets purchased, high-end hotels reserved. They robbed me. Suddenly, my phone beeped, a text from my cousin. "I am stunned that your parents and sisters left for their trip today, especially since everything that had just happened to you. I'm so upset for you, Trip." My hands trembled as I clicked on social media, and there it was. An image of my sisters smiling in first class, my mom holding a champagne flute, designer shopping bags. The words, "enjoying a much-needed vacation, time to experience the best things life has to offer." My vision swam with fury. They stole my funds, abandoned my son, and went on holiday. I quickly called the number before I could think. One buzz. 2 rings, then my mother picked up the phone. Her tone was irritated. "What?" My grip tightened so much on the phone that my knuckles were white. "Where is my son?" There was a moment of silence. Then she made a dismissive sound. She actually scoffed. "Oh, don't get so worked up. He's okay, he's at home, by himself." I almost dropped the phone. "You left him alone?" I nearly couldn't speak. Another scoff. "He's 7. He can manage." The fury that I felt at that moment was something I had never experienced previously. They deserted my kid. With my savings, and they were about to find out exactly what that meant. I ended the call without saying anything more. I then got in touch with my neighbor, Mrs. Hayes. She picked up the phone right away. "Honey, are you all right?" I had to fight back the emotion that was building up. "Mrs. Hayes, my son, he's here with me," she replied gently. "They abandoned him, my family. He came to my door frightened. Tears stung my eyes. That was the final straw for me. I called my bank next. "Freeze all my accounts," I instructed them, "right away." Next, I reached out to my attorney. They thought they could swindle me and get away with it. They had no clue who they were up against. After a couple of hours, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. I took the call. "What have you done?" she asked. I smiled, but it was icy. "Having a good trip." Quiet. Then my sister's voice, frantic, chimed in. "We tried using the credit cards, but they're all blocked. We're stuck." "What did you do?" I leaned back, relishing the moment. "I protected what's mine." They were practically yelling, enraged in a panic. "You're leaving us stranded?" I chuckled. A quiet, sinister laugh escaped me. "You stranded yourselves?" And then I did something I'd never done before. I disconnected the call. The next day, my phone rang once more. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to it just to hear the distress. It was my mom, and her voice was shaky. I didn't think it would go this way," she said, sounding truly scared. "We thought you'd forgive us." "You always do." She took a breath. "Please. We need you." I looked at the phone for a lengthy period, and then for the first time I erased the message. Their decisions, not mine, were weighing them down, a dark cloud hanging over them. For the very first time, I sensed something unfamiliar regarding my family, total freedom. No feelings of blame. I didn't feel I had to do anything. I stopped second-guessing myself. It was just pure freedom. I was sitting on my bed, still aching from the car crash, my thoughts still racing. My phone was next to me, vibrating regularly with their panicked calls. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I looked over at Leo. He sat next to me, hugging his stuffed dinosaur, the thing that always soothed him. He gripped it so hard, his little fingers were white. He'd been holding back all his feelings, trying to be strong, but I knew my son so well. I knew the second I held him close, it would all spill out. And I was correct. His little body was trembling against mine, his cries muffled by my hospital clothes. "They left me, Mommy," he whispered between sobs. I woke up and they were gone. The house was silent. My heart squeezed and a fresh wave of anger and pain washed over me. I took a deep breath and ran my hand through his hair. "I know, baby," I said softly, "and I'm so sorry." He pulled away, tears still in his big brown eyes. "Did I do something bad?" That question nearly broke me. I held his little face in my hands, making him look at me. "No, baby, never. You did nothing wrong." I saw him do it. His mouth quivered. Why did they decide to go then? How could I tell a 7-year-old the truth? How could I explain that the people who should have cared for us never actually did? To them, he and I were only things to be exploited and then thrown away. I just couldn't. So I said what I could. I whispered that they didn't understand how to love. "But that's not our problem," he cried. "Are they going to return?" I drew in a breath and I made a commitment right at that moment. "No, honey, they aren't." He slumped down and I knew I'd done the right thing. The following days were chaotic with damage control. I had to protect all my money, change all the passwords, and phone my bank and credit card companies, making sure they wouldn't get their hands on any of my money. I was no longer defending. Instead, I was attacking. After looking over my case, my lawyer called me. "You're completely in the right to take action," she told me. "Given your medical situation when they took the money, we can go after them with fraud charges." Fraud, it was the perfect word. They'd swindled me for years, emotionally, financially, and mentally. This time, they'd have to face the repercussions. The first punch came when I reversed the fraudulent charges. The banks took every penny they'd spent back. The hotels demanded payment, and the airlines blacklisted them. I pictured their expressions, the shock when their dream vacation turned into a disaster. The messages began pouring into my phone. They were directed at my mom. "How could you treat us like this? We're stuck." They went to my sister, too. "Our luggage is gone. We have absolutely nothing." And my dad received one, too. "You better take care of this right away." I couldn't help but chuckle. Fix things for them? After all they put me through, the real joy arrived when the word started to spread. You see, for years, my family presented themselves as flawless, caring, giving individuals. They attended church every Sunday. They always bragged about how generous they were. But the moment the real story came out, the facade started to crumble. Mrs. Hayes, my dear older neighbor who had rescued Leo that night, was the first to speak up. She told everyone the truth, how they had stolen from their own daughter, how they abandoned their own grandson. And all of a sudden, folks weren't so eager to lend them a hand. 2 weeks passed, and then my doorbell rang. I peeked through the peephole. And there they were, my mom, my dad. My 2 sisters were with them. They appeared worn out. My father's typical proud, assured posture was completely missing. My mother's makeup was smeared. My sisters, who typically carried themselves with such airs, seemed deflated. I let them stand there. Then, at long last, I opened the door. My mother tried to shove past me. "We need to have a conversation." I didn't move an inch. She wasn't welcome in my space anymore. "There's nothing to discuss," I stated, my voice even and composed. She scoffed, throwing her hand up in a plea. We were going through a tough time, okay? We weren't in our right minds. You stole from me." My tone was harsh, really cutting. "You left my son." My dad got upset. "You're still our daughter," he said. I grinned, but there was no warmth in it. "Nope, I was only your money source," I thought. I didn't give them a chance to try to say sorry. Because it wasn't genuine. They weren't remorseful for their actions. They just got caught and felt bad about that. I took out one envelope and I gave it to them. "What's this?" my mom questioned with suspicion. "A formal legal notice," I stated plainly. I had officially submitted paperwork for a permanent restraining order. They would never be able to exploit, pressure, or take advantage of me ever again. My mom's face fell apart. My dad's jaw clenched. My sisters, who had always treated me like I existed only to provide money, appeared totally shocked. No, my mother murmured in a shaky voice. You can't do this," she added. I held her gaze, but I just did. Then I closed the door on them, finally. The quiet in my house was intense. But for the first time ever, it wasn't the kind of quiet that felt like I couldn't breathe. It wasn't the silence of anticipating my mother's next request, my father's next stony look, or my sister's constant sense of being owed something. It was serene. I sat down at my kitchen table, looking at the order in my hands, the ultimate ending of everything they had taken from me. The ink was dry, and with it, so was any last concern I had for them. I inhaled deeply, looking out the window at the small yard where Leo was playing with Mrs. Hayes' dog. His joyful laughter echoed, free, weightless. In this moment, that was all that truly counted. I checked my cell phone. They hadn't attempted to reach out since I cut them off. It ought to have felt like I won. However, deep inside, that relentless inner voice persisted, the one I had spent years training myself to listen to. Did I go too far? Was severing ties really the best choice? Perhaps they didn't actually intend to hurt me. But then I thought about Leo and how he'd knocked on Mrs. Hayes' door in the dead of night, trembling, sobbing, alone. And just like that, the uncertainty vanished. They had truly meant every single awful thing they'd done. And I had meant every single thing I'd done to put a stop to it. For the first time in a long time, my phone remained quiet. No phone calls. No messages, no more manipulation. They finally understood they couldn't control me anymore. But even though they weren't in my life any longer, their presence still lingered like shadows. I noticed them in every moment of hesitation. Whenever I went to the store for groceries, I found myself automatically selecting extra items, things my sisters used to make me buy for them. I had to tell myself that they were no longer my responsibility. Each time Leo hesitated before requesting something, a toy, a snack, or even just my time, I saw the harm they'd caused. The way he had learned to walk on eggshells around grown-ups, afraid of becoming a problem. It took weeks of comforting him, of holding him whenever he needed it, instead of leaving him to cry by himself as they had. Of telling him repeatedly, every day, you are not a bother. You are my son, and that's why I love you no matter what. Eventually, he began to trust me. Eventually, I started to believe in myself. It felt weird, constructing a life that wasn't all about them. For ages, my life had been about reacting. I had been living defensively, constantly scrambling to clean up after them, to meet their demands, to give from nothing. Now I was finally existing for me. I went back to interests I had long abandoned. I began to read actual books again, not just financial documents to make sure I wasn't getting ripped off. I started to cook because I wanted to, not because I had to. And the best part? Leo really blossomed. His laughter was more boisterous. His gait was less heavy. He didn't ask any more in that tiny, unsure voice if I'd leave him like they did. He understood that I wouldn't. Just when I believed they had finally surrendered, it occurred. A knock on my front door. I froze. I wasn't anticipating anybody. Mrs. Hayes never knocked. She always phoned before dropping by, and Leo was already with me inside. Cautiously, I went towards the door, looking through the little spy hole. And there she was, my mother. She looked frailer than I had ever noticed. Looking like she was in dire need, I didn't unlock the door. Rather, I waited. She knocked a second time, this one more gentle. Then, after a considerable delay, she spoke through the door. I know you're in there. I stayed silent. I just wanted to avoid her. I should have just kept quiet. I should have just walked away. It would have been the right choice. Even though I knew better, I told her, go ahead, speak. I decided I wasn't going to unlock the door. I wasn't going to repeat that error. My mom let out a heavy breath, as though the world's burdens rested on her shoulders. I don't know what you expect me to say, she ultimately stated. You wrecked everything, you know. We lost everything because of you. I almost found myself laughing at the pure nerve of it. Because of me? Her tone was becoming more pointed. You left us to fend for ourselves in a foreign land. You took everything away from us. I inhaled slowly, deeply. Then I responded in a controlled voice, no, you took everything away from me. And now you're just having to deal with the outcomes of your own choices. There was silence. Then, at last, she dropped her facade. You were supposed to forgive us, she suddenly snapped. There it was. That's what you always do, she went on, her voice getting louder. You always forgive us, you always come back. But this time I cut her off. This time I finally learned my lesson. Then, without another word, I simply walked away from the door, letting her speak to the wood, understanding that saying no was the most potent action I'd ever taken. No to being manipulated. No to feeling guilty. No to letting them back into my life. My mom remained outside for nearly an hour. Eventually, she departed, and for the very first time I felt completely, absolutely liberated. The healing happened immediately. It took a while. I still had those moments, where I'd instinctively reach for my phone, thinking they'd call. I'd brace myself for another emergency I'd have to handle. But thank goodness the calls stopped. And for the first time in my life, I actually didn't mind. The months just kept rolling by. Leo went back to school, and for the first time ever, he didn't keep looking over his shoulder, worried someone would leave. I found a new job, one that I actually liked. I made a network of people, real friends who really seemed to give a damn about me, and honestly, I flourished. Without them, one day long after it all settled, Leo snuggled up to me on the couch. He looked up at me, his big brown eyes showing something I hadn't seen in ages. "Peace, Mommy," he said quietly. "Yeah, sweetie," I asked. "I'm happy now." I felt tears well up. I kissed his head, my chest practically bursting. "Me too, baby," I breathed. Me too, and for the first time ever, I truly, really believed it. As I lay there in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I had a realization. A simple yet huge truth. I'd spent so much of my life trying to be the perfect daughter, always trying to fix everything. The person who could solve any problem, the one who kept everything together. And what had I gotten out of it? Thrown away. Used, betrayed, but not anymore. Now I was free. Leo was safe, he was loved, he was doing great. I'd built a life that was truly my own. I had people who actually cared about me. Mrs. Hayes, my work buddies, even the handful of old friends who always told me I deserved better. For the first time ever, I trusted what I felt. I started to have faith in myself. Then, a few weeks later, my phone alerted me. It was an email. It was from my dad. The subject line was, "We need to discuss something." I didn't open the message. I didn't need to, because I already knew exactly what it contained. It would be some kind of sad story. They would try to get to me with manipulation. Another attempt to try and pull me back into their grasp. But I had moved on from all of that. So the only thing I could do was get rid of the email. And I never gave it a second thought. I sometimes wondered if they would make one final effort, coming to my door and making some huge theatrical appeal. But they never did. And frankly, I believe they knew. They knew I wasn't the same person they could control anymore. They knew I didn't fear them at all. They realized that they had crossed a line. And when a narcissist sees they've lost control, they vanish. Just like that, they were gone. And I felt only a sense of peace. One night, while Leo and I were sitting on the porch, Mrs. Hayes brought over a fresh tray of cookies. "Thought you two might enjoy some extra treats," she said, giving us a knowing look. Leo smiled, taking a cookie in both hands. And in that moment, I finally understood something. Family isn't defined by shared DNA. It's all about affection. It's about the people who always stay around. The people who select you not because of what you can offer them, but just for who you are. And as I laughed with my son and our new family, I knew without a doubt, we were finally at peace. We were finally where we should be.